Hi, everyone. Lisa here from Fireside Strategic. Welcome to our video cast, Humanity Builds Better Businesses, where we celebrate leaders that do transformational work within organizations, helping their clients grow and lead teams with humanity. Today, I'm excited to chat with Nathalie Doré, strategic thought partner and corporate executive coach. Nathalie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Nathalie, would love to learn a little bit more about what you do. Strategic thought partner sounds so interesting and so strategic, clearly. Meanwhile, corporate executive coach sounds like you work with people and psychology and emotions. And I would love to learn a little bit about what it means to be both of those things.
Okay. Well, to me, working with executives, they're already super smart. They're already high performers. They've already proven themselves that they can make things happen. And the last frontier for them is to learn to have more headspace, more thinking power, because as the world gets more and more complex, um, things that you knew before won't get you there. So it's learning to think dynamically, learning to expand mental models, learning to be flexible, take new input. And so that's the thought partner piece is as an external kind of like, I see myself as kind of like an external bandwidth for the executive. They're coming in, they're super stressed, and then they arrive in their session with me, and I've prepared, and I'm calm, and I'm ready. And so I give additional bandwidth for thinking, and strategically, because of my background, I understand many of the things that are going on with them. And to be strategic, you need to be able to play in time. You need to be able to see the past, you need to be able to see the future, you need to be able to take in a lot more information. And so I feel that to be strategic, you need to have a lot of bandwidth in order to process and make better estimates.
I love that. It's so often that executives, that senior C-suite leaders just pack their schedule and pack their brain with stuff, so much stuff. And it's so important to remember to take that space. And I love that you come in and strategically and emotionally help them open up that space.
Yes, I was just reading this morning, there's an article in Inc. about how Einstein and Steve Jobs, the main thing that they did is they always kept non non-work time and non-work time, but really not doing anything. And I think that we cram our days, and I'm the first one. I want to do my 30 minutes of yoga. I want to do my CrossFit. I want to do my meditation. But then it's the danger of like cramming your day with a whole bunch of really great stuff for you, but having no space to reflect, no space to think. So yeah.
I love how you brought Einstein into the picture, but a lot of senior executives wouldn't mind being a little bit more like Einstein. So you mentioned earlier that your background has allowed you to really led to a situation where you could really connect with these people. Could you tell us a little bit more about your background? What's your story that led you to this?
Um, well, my story can have many goals. I mean, my professional story starts being in learning and development. So I kind of got there by accident because I guess I was always interested in learning how things work at a deeper level. And then I was the one who would help others understand how it works. And so I kind of evolved in that space. And so I set up learning and development um, divisions for large organizations. I did that in Canada, I did that for North America, and then I did it for a big global company. And for me, I always found that learning was very strategic because learning is change, learning is being effective. And so typically, learning and development departments report to human resources. And so I made it my personal mission that within 3 years, I wanted to shift my learning and development department to organizational effectiveness and report to the C-suite because I felt it was very important to have direct access to the strategy, and so to align all the other pieces together and then bring some of these components about how do people change, how do people work, so bringing a bit of the human to the strategy. And so that's a bit how I started in the corporate world. So I was used to dealing with executives, being on the board, and I got really interested in organizations, which are really complex. So how do different systems work? How does the business make money? What are the major processes? How do we optimize all of that stuff? And after about, I don't know, 10 years into my career, it became really evident that although my strategies were very sound, that the leader of the organization or the leaders of the different teams would really have an impact on whether my programs would make a difference or not. And so I really started to get interested in leadership and my own leadership. So I think that the start of my career was really around very more technical, process oriented. And I'd say that the last 15 years has really been around shifting my interest for complexity and how things work to the most complex system in the world, which is the brain. So I got really interested in neuroscience because if we want to work with humans or humanize the workplace, we need to understand how humans work. And humans are really a brain, a brain on 2 feet. So this led me to get trained as an executive coach and then continually getting trained. So I'm always looking for the most elegant, efficient way to help people change, transform, be successful, perform at their best, feel satisfied with their life.
That's so interesting. There's so much to unpack there. I love how earlier on in your career, you very quickly recognized this theme, the strategic component, that piece that to really make change in an organization, that learning and development change, you have to work with the leadership and understand the direction that they want to strategically grow their company. But then this veering into psychology and neuroscience, it's so interesting. I love that you're really unpacking how people work and at a human level. Just curious, based on your research and delving into the neuroscience piece, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that leaders face in their role? What do you think are the things that are really holding them back that you feel you have to help them clear up?
That's a big question, Lisa.
That's true.
So the biggest problem, let me see. I think there's like a couple of pieces. More and more business schools are taking into account the human side of things, and organizations too. I mean, we're seeing the evolution, we're seeing societal changes, people working from home, big changes are happening right now. And so I think that in the past, what I've seen evolving over the years, there was this big concentration on human performance improvement. So a very mechanistic view of people and of the world, and looking at ways to optimize and be efficient. And that was kind of like the focus. And so a lot of leaders learn these sets of tools to be successful in these processes, but these are not the same processes as learning to work effectively with people. So learning to build collaboration, trust, empathy, resilience. These are different mechanisms that are much more personal. And I think that connecting to your personal story and how your mindset is built is going to help leaders make better decisions. So that's like one part of the story. And, I can share with you that personally, I was not aware of a lot of things in my childhood that I'm just learning now. And I would say that when I had my focus on organizational effectiveness and when I was a leader myself, I was very much head. I don't think I was very much connected to my body. And so I had access to models and information. And the only time I would connect to my body was when I would dance, because I've always been a dancer. So when I took time in my life, as I evolved my personal development, learning more about who I am, getting interested in different modalities and Buddhism, or just trying to figure out, as I said, my main question is, how does this work? So in wanting to figure out how I worked, I was able to discover that I was not fully tapping into the whole parts of me. So I think that I've become a much more effective human, a better listener. I think I have a lot more empathy. So there's like a piece of self-knowledge, and that's where coaching comes in, is that, you can do that in many different ways. If you just keep a journal, that'll do the job as well. It's about interacting with yourself and figuring out how you work. And I think that that's like one of the key pieces, is that I think a lot of people are doing this during COVID because either they have more time or things are changing. So as the external world is changing, their internal worlds are changing. People are getting curious about people because they're like stuck in the house with them. So maybe before they would see them just for a couple of hours a day or a couple of hours a week because everyone is so busy with their lives. So now there's like a renewed interest, a genuine interest as to, well, who are you? You live with me. Who is this person? Or who are the people that I interact with? And kind of reprioritizing who's going to be worth investing to see. So there's kind of like this personal piece. And then if we're going to talk about humanizing the workplace, it's about getting interested, as I said, in how people work. And I think that's one of the areas I spend a lot of time on, is once you figure out human variables, you can better interact with the system. So I kind of explain very soft things in a technical way so that they're understood. And I try not to simplify too much that it becomes a metaphor that could be misused. I really, depending on the person's interest, I really take the time to have them understand what's really happening under the hood. How is empathy built? How are thoughts and mental models developed? So there's developing an interest in sociology and anthropology. So there's the science of how humans work, like neuroscience, understanding how the brain works. And then there's anthropology and sociology, is understanding how people work together or how people interact together. And we're seeing more and more of that. So when there's bias training is understanding how the mind works. And diversity and inclusion is more of an anthropological, sociological topic that is being introduced into the workforce. So softer, what people call soft skills, softer and softer topics, or more human or diverse topics are being introduced in the workforce to open up mental models. So going back to your question, what's the most difficult thing? Well, the most difficult thing is to start with yourself, getting to know a little bit more why you think like that, how you think, what's important to you, what are your values, why are you doing what you're doing, what's your aspiration, and then understanding more human systems, understanding people. So if you understand yourself, then you can transfer that to understanding others. I'd say it's a long answer to your question.
That was such a beautiful answer, and there's so much richness to that. But I think you're absolutely spot on that so many leaders, so many people in general, jump into a workplace and try to just do stuff already with everybody around them. And I love that you bring it back and you start with the person. And once that person is self-aware and understands their mind and their body, they can interact with the systems more effectively. I think that's wonderful. And another piece that you touched on that really resonated is your own personal story. And I think it's brilliant that you've gone through this transition yourself, and now you're able to take that experience and help others do the same. So what I'm really curious about is, like, once you get into an organization, once you meet a leader, you have all these ideas of how to help them. What does it actually take? What do you actually do with the person and the company to help them?
Brain surgery, no. Well,
in a way.
So there's different ways to debug a problem, and there's many models for that. So One model is the Dilts or the Bateson model. So depending on the client's situation, what the organization wants to work on or the individual, as they're speaking to me, I'm listening for what's getting in the way. So sometimes it can be an environmental problem. It could be, for example, working from home. Do you have a desk? Do you have a chair? What about lighting? What about, the environment? Is it a skills situation? Is the person lacking the skills or understanding of something? Or is the organization lacking the understanding of their client, their new market? So is it around understanding and skills? Or is it around behaviors? Are there some behaviors that may be getting in the way? Or is it around their beliefs, their thinking? Are they stuck? Is there some thinking that needs to be updated? Or is it even at the identity level, at the role? So what do I think a leader is? What do I think an executive is? So sometimes I start that way. I'm like, so what do you think your organization is in? So as I'm listening to them, because I have all these models, somehow a bell rings off, like, oh, there's a bug here, there's a bug there, there's a misunderstanding here. And that's kind of like the first piece. But then the second piece is to evaluate readiness and leveraging. I might see something that's here, but the organization doesn't seem ready to go there. So it's like looking a little bit for the low-hanging fruit or the points of entry for change. So that's exactly the same process from an individual level to an organizational level. So looking at the entry point and then designing strategies. This is where the strategic thought partner thought comes in. So designing strategies to change the environment, learn new skills, become aware of behaviors, consider different models, ask yourself questions about, the meaning, the purpose. So depending on where there's an issue and where there's an entry point, that's where we'll design strategies. And then it's like building upon that. So sometimes it's very quick. Sometimes it takes a couple of sessions, 5. Sometimes I've been working with some clients for 2-3 years because they evolve, so they work through a transition, oops, they get another promotion, or something happens in their life. So, for me, I consider once I make a human connection with someone, I may not work with them, but they're like a client for life in my mind. They're like a human connection that I've made. So I have clients calling me back from like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and something has happened. So that's essentially how I work. So taking the time to connect, looking where some of the issues are, looking for points of leverage, designing strategies, implementing them, doing reinforcement, deliberate practice. And it's always very highly personalized.
Something that strikes me so much about the way that you work is it's so comprehensive. You're really looking at the external environment and the internal environment. And when you're talking about the external environment, there's the personal side and the business side, and just how dynamic it is. It's very energizing. And you can really tell that you've had these various experiences in your own life that have led to you to be able to do this so beautifully. Something I'm very curious about is what kind of companies or what kind of people do you work with ideally?
I don't have an ideal group of people, but typically I don't have a website. So if you want to find me, you'll have to look me up on LinkedIn or something like that.
I love it.
I work exclusively through word of mouth. And I've been really, really busy over the years, so I haven't had much time to really expose myself. So having an interview with you is really taking me out of my comfort zone. And so ideally, it's people that really want to have lasting change, who are very interested in taking stock of the situation and really interested in going deeper. I think that it's not always about going deeper. Oh, we need to go back to our child. It's not that kind of stuff, but it's about not taking things for face value and taking a moment to look at the meta view, really looking at what's the thing we want to work on and what's the system perspective of this thing. Because sure, we can work on the one thing, or you can do a tip and trick to get it going. But if you're not thinking of the whole system, you may be missing the boat, because maybe the problem is not here, but the problem is there. So I mean, that's really what I what I learned, and it's also how the brain works. So the way that we interact with the world is the way that we work with ourselves. So to answer your question, ideal client, people that are willing to uncover what's going on. They really want to have lasting change. They want to have a more comprehensive view of the changes that need to happen, or what's getting in the way of them having the life that they want, essentially.
I think that's beautiful. So, now that you said before you were working mostly through word of mouth, and now we're doing this interview, really curious, what does the future hold for you? What are your goals for the coming year?
So for the coming year, I really want to partner more with individuals and share more of what I've been learning. I'm especially excited right now with Lisa Feldman Barrett's work that's really debunking the triune brain, like neocortex, lizard brain, that's a myth. So I'm really interested in updating people's models around the brain and really helping coaches. So I mentor coaches and I supervise coaches. So I think I want to do some work. I don't know if it's going to be some webinars or some courses, or I really want to bring up the level of knowledge around these models for my peers, for my profession, because I really believe in, coaching is a profession that has models, and so I think I want to spend some time doing that. And I've also been testing technology, so how to use some of my practices and using technology to reinforce habits, bring awareness. So I've been doing this 6-week program that has an app. So I think I'm going to be a combination of continuing to explore, which I always do, because the more you know you don't know, and sharing. I think I need to share more. I think I was doing these videos as self-promotion, and it's just not my style. But now I'm really seeing it as sharing to get information out there. So a week ago I registered on Clubhouse, which is more my mode, because it's more conversations. So it's having conversations and having people listen in on conversations. And I'm an external thinker, so I think that's more my mode than writing. I think that when I write well, but it's very painful for me. I suffer through every moment. So I think that my mode is really dialogue. So finding platforms to communicate. So thank you very much for starting this path for me. Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited about this. I think you're an incredible communicator, and I love the way that you bring this scientific thinking and this business thinking together to really create change.